At New York's most glamorous society wedding, Damon Pierce's carefully curated future shatters when his ex-fiancée, Kalia, walks in. One glance, and he's risking everything. But is it already too late? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the flash of diamond jewelry. Everything shimmered, the champagne in tall flutes, the sequins on designer gowns, the polished marble floors. This was, without question, the society wedding of the year. Damon Pierce stood near the bar, a glass of scotch in his hand. At 30, he had already conquered New York's cutthroat real estate market. His face appeared regularly on business magazines, always with the same cold, calculating expression. Tonight, he wore a custom tuxedo that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. "Nervous, little brother?" asked Marcus Pierce, clapping Damon on the shoulder. Damon's mouth twitched into what passed for a smile these days. "Why would I be nervous? This marriage, has been in the works for months." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Maybe because you invited your ex-fiancée to your wedding." Damon swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "Kalia won't come." "You sure about that?" "Because sending her an invitation was either the cruelest thing you've ever done or the stupidest." "Drop it, Marcus." Damon downed his drink in one swallow. "She's part of the past. Tonight is about securing the future." His eyes drifted to his bride-to-be, Vanessa Hollingsworth. At 24, she was the daughter of banking royalty, with her father's connections and her mother's striking blonde beauty. The Hollingsworth name would open doors even Damon's millions couldn't buy. It was a perfect arrangement. "Mr. Pierce, the photographer wants some pre-ceremony shots," a wedding planner chirped, appearing at his elbow. Damon nodded and handed his empty glass to his brother. "Duty calls." As he crossed the room, Damon checked his watch. The ceremony would begin in an hour. Guests were still arriving, filling the reception area with chatter and laughter. He scanned the crowd automatically, telling himself he wasn't looking for a particular face. "Darling, there you are," Vanessa said, sliding her arm through his. She looked flawless in her designer gown, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. "Daddy's been talking your ear off about that waterfront development, hasn't he?" "Just business as usual," Damon replied, leading her toward the photographer. "Well, after tonight, you'll officially be family." "No more business talk at family gatherings," she laughed, but her eyes were serious. Damon forced another smile. The Hollingsworths were buying his name as much as he was buying theirs. Old money meets new money, the perfect society match. The photographer positioned them before a backdrop of white roses. "Beautiful couple," he murmured, snapping away. "Mr. Pierce, could you put your arm around your bride?" Damon complied mechanically. 5 years ago, touching Kalia had never felt like a chore. Every embrace had been natural, every kiss desired. He pushed the thought away. "Mr. Hollingsworth is requesting your presence, Miss Vanessa," an attendant said. When Vanessa left to find her father, Damon loosened his tie slightly. He needed air. The ballroom suddenly felt too crowded, too hot, too fake. He made his way toward the entrance, nodding at guests as he passed. That's when he saw her. Kalia Brooks stood in the doorway, and the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. She wore a simple midnight blue dress that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, adorned with small silver pins that caught the light. She wore no jewelry, except small diamond studs in her ears. She didn't need any. Her presence was the only accessory required. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Damon froze. This was supposed to be his final triumph. "Look what you lost, Kalia. Look what I've become without you." But as she stepped into the room with quiet confidence, it felt like he was the one who had lost everything. Kalia's eyes scanned the room until they locked with his. For one electric moment, 5 years collapsed into nothing. Then, with the slightest nod of acknowledgement, she turned away and accepted a glass of champagne from a waiter. Damon felt someone at his side. Marcus whistled low under his breath. "You didn't think she'd come," Marcus said. "You underestimated her. Again." "I need to talk to her," Damon said, his voice tight. "Terrible idea." Marcus grabbed his arm. "It's your wedding day, for God's sake." But Damon shook him off. He watched as an old family friend, Jordan Michaels, approached Kalia with obvious delight. She smiled warmly at him, that smile that had once been reserved for Damon. Jordan said something that made her laugh, and the sound carried across the room, striking Damon like a physical blow. He started toward them, but was intercepted by his future father-in-law. "There's my new son," Harold Hollingsworth boomed, wrapping a beefy arm around Damon's shoulders. "Let's talk about that zoning issue before the ceremony, shall we?" "Now isn't a good time, Harold," Damon said, his eyes still fixed on Kalia. "Nonsense, there's always time for business." Harold steered him toward a quiet corner. For the next 20 minutes, Damon nodded and made appropriate responses while watching Kalia from across the room. She moved with grace, spoke with poise, and charmed everyone she encountered. Even Vanessa's mother, the notoriously judgmental Eleanor Hollingsworth, seemed captivated by her. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had sent the invitation as a power move. "See my success. See what you're missing." But Kalia wasn't falling apart or making a scene. She was thriving, radiating a quiet strength that made his elaborate wedding seem hollow in comparison. Finally breaking free of Harold, Damon made his way toward Kalia. The crowd seemed to part between them, as if sensing the inevitable collision of their worlds. Jordan saw him coming and discreetly stepped away, leaving Kalia alone with her champagne glass. She turned to face him, her expression composed. "Kalia," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Damon." Her voice was steady, with no hint of the passion that once colored every word between them. "Congratulations on your wedding." "You shouldn't have come," he hissed, lowering his voice. "I didn't come for you," she answered softly. "I came to remind myself I survived you." Her words hit like a slap. He had expected anger, jealousy, even tears, anything but this calm acceptance. "You look well," he said, searching for any crack in her composure. "I am well." She took a sip of champagne. "Your bride is beautiful. The Hollingsworths must be thrilled to have the great Damon Pierce joining their dynasty." "It's a good match," he said automatically. "Is it?" Her eyes, those deep brown eyes that once saw through every defense he built, studied him. "Does she know you, Damon? The real you?" "There is no real me anymore," he said, his voice low and bitter. "Just what you see. Successful, powerful, exactly what I always wanted to be. And lonely," she added, not unkindly. I recognized the look. Before he could respond, the wedding planner appeared at his side. "Mr. Pierce, we need you in position. The ceremony begins in 15 minutes. Kalia nodded politely. "You should go. Your future is waiting." As she turned to walk away, Damon reached out and caught her wrist. The touch sent electricity through him, familiar yet forbidden. "Why really did you come, Kalia?" he asked, searching her face. She gently removed his hand from her wrist. "Closure, Damon. Something you never gave me 5 years ago when you walked out of my life without explanation. Now I can finally close that chapter. And if I told you I never stopped loving you?" The words escaped before he could stop them. Kalia's composure wavered for just a moment. Then she shook her head. "Then I'd say you have terrible timing, and that love without courage isn't love at all." She walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of his own wedding reception. 5 years earlier, their story had been so different. Damon Pierce had been a hungry young developer, with more ambition than capital, working out of a tiny office in a rundown building he'd managed to buy with every cent he had. Kalia Brooks had been a community organizer with a master's degree in urban planning and a passion for affordable housing. They'd met at a contentious town hall meeting where Damon had proposed converting an old factory into luxury condos. "Your project will displace dozens of families who've lived in this neighborhood for generations," she challenged him publicly, her voice clear and fearless. "My project will bring jobs and tax revenue to a failing area," he'd countered. Their debate had continued in the parking lot, then over coffee, then dinner. By midnight, they were still arguing, but with a growing respect that surprised them both. "You're not just another greedy developer, are you?" Kalia had asked, studying him over the rim of her coffee cup. "And you're not just another idealistic activist," he'd replied, with the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. Kalia saw past Damon's rough edges to the wounded, determined man beneath. He'd grown up poor, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs until cancer took her when he was 17. Everything he'd achieved had been through sheer force of will. Kalia believed in his potential before anyone else did. She challenged his cutthroat business instincts while supporting his drive to succeed. With her influence, he modified his development plans to include affordable housing units. Together, they were building something meaningful. "We make each other better," she told him the night he proposed, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "You push me to be practical, I push you to be compassionate." The engagement ring had been modest, all he could afford then, but Kalia had treasured it. "This ring represents the real you," she'd said, "the man who stretches himself for love, not for show." Then everything changed. Damon's ambitious bid on a prime Manhattan property paid off beyond his wildest expectations. Suddenly, he was moving in powerful circles, making deals with people who could transform his future. People who looked at Kalia, with her community activism and outspoken social justice views, as a liability. "She's holding you back," Richard Townsend, his new mentor and investor, had told him over cigars at an exclusive club where Kalia wouldn't have been welcome. "A man on his way up needs the right kind of partner. Strategic alliances, Damon. That's how empires are built." The late-night arguments between Damon and Kalia grew more frequent. His newfound success was changing him, and she called him on it. "You're becoming someone I don't recognize," she'd said during their last fight. "Someone who values profit over people." "I'm becoming successful," he'd shot back. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "Not at the cost of your soul." The next day, Damon had walked out without explanation. No goodbye, no closure. He'd left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter of their shared apartment and disappeared from her life. Within a year, Pierce Developments had become a major player in New York real estate. Within 3, Damon's net worth had crossed into 9 figures. Everything he'd ever wanted was his, except the woman who had believed in him when he had nothing. 5 minutes to ceremony," the wedding planner called out, breaking into Damon's memories. Guests were being ushered into the adjoining ballroom where the wedding would take place. Damon spotted his brother Marcus talking seriously with Jordan by the bar, both occasionally glancing his way. He looked around for Kalia and saw her quietly making her way toward the exit. She was leaving before the ceremony. The realization hit him harder than he expected. Vanessa appeared at his side, radiant in her wedding gown. "Isn't this perfect?" she whispered, squeezing his arm. "Everyone who matters in New York is here." Over her shoulder, Damon watched Kalia pause at the door, her hand on the handle. She looked back just once across the crowded room. Their eyes met for the second time that evening. In that moment, the carefully constructed facade of his life seemed to crack. The woman leaving was the one who knew him, really knew him. The woman beside him was a stranger wearing an expensive white dress. "Damon?" Vanessa's voice sharpened. "Are you listening to me?" "I need a minute," he said abruptly, pulling away from her. "We don't have a minute. Everyone's waiting." But he was already moving across the room, driven by an impulse he couldn't name. Kalia had disappeared through the door, and he quickened his pace, ignoring the curious stares of his guests. In the hotel corridor, he caught sight of her waiting for the elevator. "Kalia, wait." She turned, surprise evident on her face. "Damon, go back. Your wedding is about to start." "I can't," he said, the words tumbling out. "Not until I tell you the truth. I left because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Her voice was guarded now. "Afraid I'd destroy you with my ambition. Afraid I didn't know how to love gently. I built everything I thought I wanted, but you were the only thing that ever made it mean anything." Kalia listened, her eyes steady. Her voice shook only slightly when she replied. "You didn't leave to protect me, Damon. You left because you were a coward. You chose the easy path, wealth, status, power, over the harder road of becoming a better man." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Kalia stepped inside. "Please," Damon said, his voice breaking. "Don't go. You're the one who left, Damon. I'm just following your example." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Goodbye." The doors closed between them. Damon stood frozen, staring at his reflection in the polished metal. Behind him, he heard the wedding march beginning to play. His phone buzzed incessantly with texts from Marcus, the wedding planner, his future father-in-law. Slowly, he turned and walked back toward the ceremony. Each step felt heavier than the last. The grand ballroom doors stood open, revealing rows of expectant faces. At the far end, under an arch of white roses, Vanessa waited in her designer gown, her expression a mixture of relief and irritation at his return. Damon took his position at the altar. The music swelled. The bride processed down the aisle on her father's arm. Cameras flashed. Everything proceeded exactly as planned, except for the hollow feeling in Damon's chest and his eyes that kept drifting to the ballroom doors, hoping for a glimpse of midnight blue. The priest began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Damon heard the words as if from a great distance. The room, the guests, even Vanessa seemed to fade away as the enormity of his mistake, not just today but 5 years ago, crashed over him. The priest continued through the ritual until the moment of truth arrived. "Do you, Damon Pierce, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part. Damon's eyes stayed locked on the ballroom doors. The silence stretched. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Damon?" Vanessa hissed, squeezing his hands painfully. The doors at the back of the ballroom remained closed. Kalia was gone. Damon opened his mouth to answer. Damon's voice faltered. The faces before him blurred as sweat beaded on his forehead. "I can't." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Cameras flashed frantically, capturing the moment that would dominate gossip columns for weeks to come. "What did you say?" Vanessa whispered, her face draining of color beneath her perfect makeup. "I'm sorry," Damon said, his voice growing stronger. "I can't marry you." Vanessa's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke." He gently released her hands. "This isn't right, for either of us." Harold Hollingsworth surged forward, his face purpling with rage. "Now you listen here, Pierce." But Damon was already moving, striding down the aisle past shocked guests and buzzing photographers. Marcus caught up with him at the door. "Have you lost your mind?" his brother hissed. "Maybe I've finally found it," Damon replied, loosening his bow tie as he pushed through the doors. He ran down the corridor to the elevators, jabbing the button repeatedly. When the doors finally opened, he found himself facing a hotel security guard. "Mr. Pierce, there seems to be a situation in the ballroom." "Tell me about it," Damon muttered, stepping around him and heading for the stairs instead. He took them two at a time, his expensive shoes echoing in the stairwell. On the ground floor, he burst into the lobby, scanning frantically for any sign of Kalia. The revolving doors spun as guests for another event entered. Outside, cars lined the circular driveway. "Sir?" The concierge approached cautiously. "Is everything all right? Did you see a woman in a midnight blue dress leave about 10 minutes ago?" The concierge hesitated. "I believe she got into a taxi, sir." Damon ran outside, ignoring the startled doorman. Rain had started falling, speckling the pavement with dark spots. He looked up and down the busy street, but there was no sign of Kalia. "Mr. Pierce?" It was Jordan, Kalia's friend, jogging toward him from the hotel entrance. "What happened in there?" "I couldn't go through with it," Damon said, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "I need to find Kalia. Do you know where she lives now?" Jordan studied him for a long moment. "She moved after you left her, has her own place in Brooklyn. But Damon, are you sure about this? You just left a woman at the altar." "I know what I did." Damon's voice was sharp with urgency. "And I'll deal with the consequences. But right now I need to talk to Kalia before it's too late." Jordan sighed and pulled out his phone. "I'll text you her address, but she might not want to see you. I have to try." Back inside the hotel, chaos reigned. Guests milled about in confusion, while the wedding planner frantically tried to maintain order. The Hollingsworths had disappeared, presumably to comfort Vanessa. Photographers hovered like vultures, hoping for more drama to capture. Marcus stood by the bar, nursing a scotch. When he saw Damon, he raised his glass in a mock toast. "Well, brother, you certainly know how to make an exit." Despite his sarcastic tone, there was a hint of relief in Marcus's eyes. "The Hollingsworths are threatening to sue for breach of contract, by the way." "Let them," Damon said, checking his phone for Jordan's text. "I need to borrow your car." "My car? Where's yours?" "Vanessa's father has the keys. Wedding present." Marcus laughed despite himself and tossed over his key fob. "You're a mess, you know that? But for what it's worth, I never liked Vanessa anyway." "Thanks," Damon said, catching the keys. "Cover for me here?" "What am I supposed to tell all these people?" "The truth." Damon was already heading for the exit again. "Tell them I finally came to my senses." Across town, Kalia sat in her small Brooklyn apartment, her midnight blue dress discarded in favor of comfortable pajamas. She stared at the television without seeing it, a cup of tea cooling untouched beside her. The wedding invitation lay on her coffee table. For weeks after receiving it, she had alternated between rage and heartbreak. Her friends had urged her to ignore it, to tear it up, to send it back with a scathing note. Instead, she had decided to go, to finally face the ghost that had haunted her for 5 years. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text from Jordan. "You okay? Call me when you can." "Things got crazy after you left." Before she could respond, another text appeared, this one from an unknown number. "This is Marcus Pierce. Damon's on his way to see you. He left Vanessa at the altar. Thought you should know." Kalia dropped the phone as if it had burned her. Left her at the altar? What was Damon thinking? She paced her small living room, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to grab her keys and leave before he arrived. Another part, a part she'd tried so hard to silence, wanted to see his face when he explained himself. A memory surfaced, sharp and painful, their last night together, before he walked out without a word. They had argued about a new development project, one that would demolish a historic black neighborhood to make way for luxury condos. Kalia had been working with community organizers to save the area. Damon had recently partnered with Richard Townsend, whose firm owned the land. "You can't do this, Damon," she had pleaded. "These people have nowhere else to go. Business is business, Kalia. You can't save everyone. But you're not just anyone. You came from nothing. You know what it's like to be pushed out, to struggle." "Exactly. I came from nothing and I fought my way up. Now I finally have a chance to secure my future, our future." At what cost? She had taken his hands, trying to reach the man she fell in love with. "The Damon I know wouldn't destroy lives for profit." His eyes had hardened. "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." The next morning, he was gone. No note, no call, just her engagement ring on the kitchen counter. 2 days later, she saw him in the newspaper, standing beside Richard Townsend and the mayor, announcing the new development project. It was as if the man she loved had been replaced by a stranger wearing his face. A knock at her door jolted her back to the present. She froze, knowing exactly who stood on the other side. The knock came again, more insistent. "Kalia, please, I know you're in there." Taking a deep breath, she moved to the door and opened it. Damon stood there, soaking wet from the rain, still in his wedding tuxedo minus the bow tie. His hair was plastered to his head, his eyes wild with an emotion she couldn't name. "What are you doing here?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "I couldn't do it," he said simply. "I couldn't marry her." "So you left her standing at the altar? That's cruel, Damon, even for you." "I know." He ran a hand through his wet hair. "But staying would have been crueler. For both of us." Kalia crossed her arms, blocking the doorway. "And you came here because seeing you today made me realize what I've been running from for 5 years. The truth." Despite herself, Kalia felt a flicker of curiosity. "What truth? Can I come in? Please? I'm dripping all over your hallway." After a moment's hesitation, she stepped aside. Damon entered, looking incongruous in her modest apartment with its second-hand furniture and colorful throw pillows. He seemed larger than life against her ordinary surroundings. "Nice place," he said, glancing around. "It's home," she replied simply. "I don't need marble countertops to be happy." Damon winced at the implied criticism. "I deserved that. You deserve a lot worse." She moved to the kitchen area and grabbed a dish towel, tossing it to him. "Dry off while you explain why you're here." He patted his face and hair with the towel. "I've been lying to myself for 5 years, Kalia. Telling myself I left you because I was protecting you from what I was becoming, that you were better off without me." "How noble," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "No, not noble. Cowardly." He met her eyes directly. "The truth is, I left because you scared me." That caught her off guard. "I scared you? How?" "You saw through me, all of me. The good, the bad, the broken parts I've spent my life hiding." He paced her small living room. "With you, I couldn't hide behind my money or my power. You called me on every lie I told myself. That's what love is supposed to be, Damon, honesty. I know that now." He stopped pacing and faced her. "When I saw you today, so strong, so complete without me, it broke something open inside me. All these years I've been building an empire on sand. Nothing feels real. Nothing except how I felt when I saw you again." Kalia felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. She turned away, unable to look at the raw emotion on his face. "Why did you invite me to your wedding, Damon? Was it just to hurt me?" He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I told myself it was to show you what you'd missed, to prove I'd moved on." He swallowed hard. "But the truth is, I wanted to see you one more time before I closed that door forever. I never thought you'd actually come." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But then I realized I'd never move forward if I didn't face you one last time." "And now?" he asked, taking a step toward her. "Now that you've faced me?" Kalia backed away, maintaining the distance between them. "Now you need to leave. You've made a mess of your life, Damon. Again." "But that's not my problem anymore. What if I want it to be?" He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "What if I've finally figured out what matters?" 5 years too late," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You can't just walk back into my life and expect everything to be fixed because you had a moment of clarity at your wedding. I know it's not that simple. I know I hurt you." "Hurt me?" Kalia's calm facade finally cracked. "You destroyed me, Damon. You walked out without a word, without an explanation. I had to watch you on TV, in newspapers, building your precious empire while I picked up the pieces of my life. I'm sorry, he said, the words inadequate against the pain in her eyes. Sorry doesn't change anything. You made your choice 5 years ago. People change, Kalia. Do they? She studied his face. Or do they just become more of who they really are? You always wanted power, success, status. Now you have it all. And it means nothing. He stepped closer, his voice urgent. All those things I chased, they're empty without someone to share them with. Someone real. Then find someone real, Damon. But it won't be me. She moved to the door and opened it. Goodbye. Instead of leaving, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I kept this. All these years. Kalia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing her old engagement ring, the modest diamond he'd given her before his success, when they were still dreaming of a future together. I told myself I kept it as an investment reminder. Buy low, sell high. A sad smile crossed his face. But that was another lie. I kept it because it was the last real thing in my life, the last true promise I made. Damon, don't. Her voice wavered. I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I don't deserve that. He closed the box and placed it on her coffee table. I just want you to know that the man who gave you this ring, he's still in here somewhere, and he never stopped loving you. The silence between them stretched, filled with 5 years of unspoken words, regrets, and might-have-beens. Finally, Kalia spoke, her voice quiet but firm. I need time, Damon. This is all too much. Too fast. He nodded, accepting this small concession. I understand. Just don't close the door completely, please. She didn't answer, but she didn't push him out either. It was the barest hint of possibility, but for now, it was enough. I should go, he said, moving toward the door. Thank you for listening. As he stepped into the hallway, Kalia called after him. What are you going to do now? About the wedding, the Hollingsworths, your company? Damon turned back, a hint of his old determination in his eyes. I'm going to fix what I can, make amends where possible, and then I'm going to rebuild, but differently this time. That won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. He held her gaze one last time. Good night, Kalia. After he left, Kalia sat on her couch, staring at the velvet box on her coffee table. Her phone buzzed with more texts. Jordan checking in, friends who had heard about the wedding disaster through social media, even Marcus with a cryptic, "How'd it go?" She ignored them all, lost in thought. The man who had just left was both achingly familiar and a complete stranger. The Damon she had loved was somewhere in there, but so was the cold, calculating businessman who had broken her heart. Could people truly change, or was she setting herself up for another heartbreak? The next morning, Damon sat in his penthouse office, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, facing the wreckage of his personal and professional life. His phone had been ringing non-stop since the wedding fiasco. His social media accounts were flooded with notifications. News outlets were calling for statements. You look like hell, Marcus said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. Feel worse, Damon replied, accepting a cup gratefully. The Hollingsworths are on the warpath, Marcus reported, sitting across from him. Harold's threatening to pull out of the downtown project and sue for emotional distress. Their PR team is already spinning this as you having a mental health crisis. Let them. I don't care anymore. You might when they start targeting your company. Richard Townsend called this morning. Says he wants to re-evaluate your partnership. Damon's jaw tightened. Townsend never cared about me. Only what I could do for him. Welcome to the world you've been living in, little brother. Marcus leaned forward. So what's the plan? And please tell me you have one. I do. Damon took a deep breath. First, I make things right with Vanessa. She didn't deserve what I did, regardless of whether we should have been getting married. Good luck with that. Her mother says she's inconsolable. Then I'll handle the business fallout. If Townsend wants out, fine. I'll buy him out if I have to. With what money? Most of your liquid assets are tied up in your joint ventures. Damon's smile was grim. Then I'll start over. Sell what I have to. Downsize. Go back to the basics. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Who are you and what have you done with my brother? I'm still me, Damon said quietly. Just more like the me I was supposed to be. Before Marcus could respond, Damon's assistant buzzed through on the intercom. Mr. Pierce, there's a Miss Rothschild here to see you. She's quite insistent. Damon and Marcus exchanged alarmed looks. Vanessa's mother, Marcus muttered. This should be fun. Send her in, Damon said, straightening his tie. Eleanor Rothschild swept into the office like an avenging angel, her Chanel suit immaculate, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. At 60, She was still beautiful, but in a cold, intimidating way that her daughter had begun to emulate. "Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice arctic, "I assume you know why I'm here. To tell me what a terrible person I am," Damon replied calmly. "You'd be right." His admission seemed to throw her momentarily. "Sayu humiliated my daughter in front of the entire New York elite. The damage to her reputation is entirely my fault," Damon finished, "and I'm truly sorry for hurting Vanessa. She deserved better." Eleanor's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What game are you playing?" "No game, Mrs. Rothschild, just the truth." "The truth?" She laughed bitterly. "Since when have you cared about that? My sources tell me you ran after that woman, the one in the blue dress. An old flame, I understand?" Damon didn't answer, but his expression confirmed her suspicions. "So that's it. You threw away a beneficial marriage for some... what? Childhood sweetheart?" "Her name is Kalia," Damon said, his voice hardening. "And yes, I loved her. Still do." Eleanor studied him with newfound interest. "Well, this is unexpected." The ruthless Damon Pierce, brought low by sentiment. She placed her designer handbag on his desk and took out a slim folder. "Unfortunately for you, business is business." She slid the folder toward him. Damon opened it to find legal documents outlining the dissolution of several key partnerships between Pierce Developments and Rothschild Holdings. "Harold wanted to destroy you completely," Eleanor said, watching his face. "I convinced him that would be inefficient. These terms allow us to separate our business interests with minimal public drama." Damon scanned the documents, immediately spotting the trap. "This gives you controlling interest in the waterfront project. That's my biggest development. Consider it compensation for our daughter's broken heart." Eleanor's smile was predatory. "Sign it, and we'll handle the press discreetly. Fight it, and we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are." Marcus, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. "This is blackmail. This is business," Eleanor corrected. "Something your brother used to understand." She turned back to Damon. "You have until tomorrow to decide. Choose wisely." After she left, Marcus exploded. "You can't sign that. They're trying to steal everything you've built." "Not everything," Damon said thoughtfully. "Just the parts they want, which happen to be the most valuable parts." Damon stood and moved to the window, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. "You know what I realized last night talking to Kalia? All these buildings, all these deals, they're just things. Things I chased because I thought they would fill the emptiness inside me." "Very philosophical," Marcus said dryly, "but those things are your life's work." "No." Damon turned back to face his brother. "My life's work is what I do next, how I rebuild." He picked up the folder Eleanor had left. "I'll have our lawyers review this, see if there's room to negotiate. But if not, I'm prepared to walk away. For a woman who might not even take you back." "For myself," Damon corrected. "Whether Kalia gives me another chance or not, I need to become someone I can respect again." Marcus shook his head in amazement. "Well, little brother, I never thought I'd see the day. The mighty Damon Pierce, choosing love over money." "Not just love," Damon said quietly. "Truth." 3 days later, Kalia was working late at the community center where she ran affordable housing programs. The wedding scandal had been all over the news, with speculation running wild about why Damon Pierce had left his society bride at the altar. So far, his name hadn't been linked to hers, but it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. Already, Jordan had fielded calls from reporters asking about the mystery woman in blue. As she gathered her papers to leave, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Turn on NY1 News. Now." Curious, she found the remote for the small TV in the break room and switched it on. Damon's face filled the screen. He was standing at a podium, facing a room full of reporters. "Which is why, effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO of Pierce Developments." Kalia gasped, turning up the volume. "The waterfront project will continue under new management," Damon continued, his voice steady, "but with a significant change. 50% of the units will now be designated as affordable housing, with priority given to residents of the original neighborhood." Reporters shouted questions, but Damon raised a hand for silence. "I entered this business to build things that last. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what that really means. It's not just about steel and glass, it's about people, communities." His eyes seemed to look directly through the camera. "I forgot that once. I won't make that mistake again." As the press conference ended, and commentators began analyzing what this meant for New York real estate, Kalia's phone rang. It was Jordan. "Are you watching this?" he asked without preamble. "Yes," she said, still stunned. "Did you know he was planning this?" "No idea, but that's not all. Word is he signed over controlling interest in his biggest projects to the Hollingsworths as some kind of wedding cancellation settlement. He gave up his company? Not all of it, but a significant chunk. He's keeping his original buildings, the ones he developed before partnering with Townsend. Kalia sat down, trying to process this information. Why would he do that? You really don't know. Jordan's voice was gentle. Kalia, he's dismantling his empire for you. I didn't ask him to do that. You didn't have to. He's trying to become the man you always believed he could be. After hanging up, Kalia sat in the empty break room, watching as financial analysts debated the impact of Damon's announcement on the market. Words like irrational, emotional decision, and career suicide were thrown around freely, but all she could think about was the look in his eyes when he talked about building things that last. Her phone buzzed again with another text from the unknown number. He means it, you know. Marcus Pierce. Before she could decide how to respond, another text came through, this one from Damon himself. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because of you. There's a difference. Kalia stared at the message, her heart racing. 5 years of anger and hurt battled with the undeniable truth that the man she had seen on television tonight was more like the Damon she had fallen in love with than the cold businessman he had become. People could change, or perhaps they could remember who they truly were. She began typing a response, then stopped, erased it, and started again. Finally, she sent just 3 words. I'm proud of you. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't a promise, but it was a beginning. Outside her window, the Brooklyn skyline glittered against the night sky. Somewhere across the East River, in his Manhattan penthouse, Damon Pierce was starting over, and so perhaps was she. 2 weeks after the wedding that never happened, Damon sat in a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from his usual Manhattan haunts. He checked his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Kalia was late, and with each passing moment, his certainty wavered. After her text, I'm proud of you, they had exchanged a few cautious messages. Finally, he had suggested meeting for coffee. Neutral territory. No pressure. Just talk. She had agreed, but now he wondered if she'd changed her mind. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and there she was. Kalia wore jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. So different from the elegant woman in midnight blue who had walked into his wedding, yet just as breathtaking. She spotted him and made her way to his table. Sorry I'm late, meeting ran long. No problem, he said, trying to sound casual despite his racing heart. I ordered you a latte. You still take it with almond milk? A flicker of surprise crossed her face. You remembered. I remember everything about you, Kalia. She looked away, uncomfortable with the intensity in his eyes. Let's not start there, okay? This is just coffee. Damon nodded, reining himself in. Right, just coffee. An awkward silence fell between them, 5 years of hurt and missed opportunities sitting like a third person at their table. Finally, Kalia spoke. I saw the announcement about the waterfront project. 50% affordable housing is impressive. It's what should have been done from the beginning, Damon admitted. You were right about that neighborhood. Those families deserved better. How did Townsend take it? A grim smile crossed Damon's face. Not well. He pulled out completely, called me soft and sentimental. Are you? She asked, studying him over the rim of her coffee cup. Maybe I am now. His eyes met hers. Would that be such a bad thing? Before she could answer, Damon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. Sorry, my lawyer. They're still sorting out the mess with the Hollingsworths. How bad is it? Bad enough. He pocketed the phone without answering. But that's my problem, not yours. Is that why you wanted to meet? To talk about your problems? No, he said quickly. I wanted to see you. To find out if there's any chance. Damon. She cut him off gently. 2 weeks ago you were marrying someone else. Your life is in chaos, and we haven't really known each other for 5 years. I know you, he insisted, and you know me, better than anyone. I knew you, she corrected. The man who left me without a word? I didn't know him at all. The hurt in her voice cut through him like a knife. You're right, and I can't undo that, but I can try to be better now. Kalia sighed, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Why did you really invite me to your wedding, Damon? The truth this time. He was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. I told myself it was to show you I'd moved on, but deep down, I think I wanted you to stop me. That's not fair, she said, her voice low but firm. You can't put that responsibility on me. I know. It was cowardly. Again, he leaned forward. But seeing you there, so strong, so beautiful, It forced me to face the truth I'd been running from. I never stopped loving you, Kalia. Not for a single day. She looked away, blinking rapidly. Love isn't enough, Damon. Trust matters too. And you shattered that when you walked out. Then let me rebuild it, he said simply. Day by day, however long it takes. Before she could respond, the cafe door opened again. A tall, handsome man in a doctor's coat entered, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Kalia. His face lit up with a warm smile as he approached their table. There you are, he said, leaning down to kiss Kalia's cheek. Sorry to interrupt, but I only have 20 minutes before I'm due back at the hospital. Damon felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. He watched as Kalia's expression softened when she looked at the newcomer. David, this is Damon Pierce, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Damon, this is David Chen, my friend. The hesitation before friend told Damon everything he needed to know. David extended his hand and Damon shook it automatically. Pierce, the developer? David's eyebrows rose. I've read about you. Quite a career. Had quite a career, Damon corrected, forcing a polite smile. Things are changing. An uncomfortable silence fell. David glanced between them, clearly sensing the tension. I can come back later if you two need more time. No, Kalia said quickly. We were just finishing up. She turned to Damon. Thank you for the coffee. Damon wanted to protest, to ask her to stay, but the warning in her eyes stopped him. Of course, it was good to see you. He watched as she gathered her purse and stood. David placed a hand lightly on her lower back, a casual gesture that spoke of intimacy and familiarity. They walked to a table across the cafe, their heads bent close together in conversation. Damon sat alone, his coffee growing cold, feeling like the biggest fool in New York. Of course she would have moved on. Of course someone would have seen what he had thrown away, someone worthy of her. He left money on the table and walked out without looking back, missing the way Kalia's eyes followed him to the door. A doctor? You're dating a doctor? Marcus's incredulous voice echoed through Damon's new office. It was a far cry from his former penthouse suite, just a modest space in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. Most of his staff had jumped ship when he'd restructured the company, unwilling to follow him into his new vision of community-focused development. Apparently, Damon said, sorting through blueprints for a small renovation project, and he's exactly what you'd expect. Handsome, successful, probably saves lives before breakfast. Well, that's unfortunate timing. Marcus perched on the edge of Damon's desk. Speaking of timing, have you seen the business section today? He tossed a newspaper onto the blueprints. The headline made Damon wince. Pierce Development's stock plummets amid CEO's personal crisis. They're calling it a mental breakdown, Marcus said. Townsend's been talking to the press. Let him talk. Damon pushed the paper aside. I don't care what they say about me. Maybe you should. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss your future with the company. They can't force me out. I still own controlling interest. Barely, Marcus reminded him. And if the stock drops much further, the shareholders could have grounds for a lawsuit. Townsend's already making noise about breach of fiduciary duty. Damon leaned back in his chair, suddenly tired. Maybe it would be better if they did force me out. Clean break, start something new. Is that really what you want? To throw away everything you've built? I'm not throwing it away, Damon said firmly. I'm choosing a different path. Maybe the path I should have been on all along. Marcus studied his brother with newfound respect. This isn't just about Kalia anymore, is it? It never was. Not entirely. Damon stood and moved to the window, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. She just reminded me of who I used to be, who I want to be again. And who is that exactly? Someone who builds things that matter, someone who makes a difference, not just a profit. He turned back to Marcus. Remember what Mom used to say? A house is just wood and stone until you fill it with love. Marcus's expression softened at the mention of their mother. She would be proud of you, you know, even with all this chaos. I hope so. Damon's phone buzzed with an incoming text. He checked it, then frowned. Bad news? Marcus asked. It's from Jordan. Apparently Richard Townsend is trying to buy Kalia's community center building. He wants to turn it into luxury condos. That's a little too coincidental, Marcus said, his eyes narrowing. Sounds like payback. Damon's jaw tightened. Townsend knows exactly what he's doing. He's going after her to get to me. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. Damon grabbed his jacket. Even if she never speaks to me again, I won't let Townsend destroy what she's built. Kalia sat in her tiny office at the community center, staring at the official-looking letter that had arrived that morning. The building's owner was selling, and Richard Townsend's company had made an offer. They had 90 days to vacate. "This can't be happening," said Maria, the center's program coordinator. "Where will our families go? Where will we move the programs?" "We're not going anywhere," Kalia said with more confidence than she felt. "This center has been here for 20 years. We'll fight this." But privately, she knew they had few options. The neighborhood was gentrifying rapidly, and developers like Townsend had deep pockets. Her phone had been ringing all morning with panicked calls from staff and community members. When her office door opened without a knock, she looked up in irritation, only to find Damon standing there. "I heard about Townsend," he said without preamble. "This is my fault." "Not everything is about you, Damon," she replied, too tired for niceties. "Townsend's been trying to buy this block for years. But the timing isn't a coincidence. He's doing this because of me, because I backed out of our partnership." He moved closer to her desk. "Let me help." "How? By buying the building yourself? Trading one developer for another? If that's what it takes." "Yes." His eyes were earnest. "But I was thinking we could find a way to put it in trust for the community. Make it impossible for anyone to sell it out from under you again." Kalia studied him, trying to reconcile this man with the cold businessman he had become. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do." He held her gaze. "And because I owe you, for everything." Before she could respond, David appeared in the doorway. He took in the scene with a quick glance, his eyes narrowing slightly at Damon. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I brought lunch, Kalia, but I can come back later." "No, it's fine," Damon said, stepping back. "I was just leaving. Think about what I said, Kalia. Please." After he left, David placed a takeout bag on her desk. That was Damon Pierce again. "Your ex?" "Yes." She began unpacking the food mechanically. "He heard about our situation with the building. And he's going to what? Swoop in and save the day?" David's tone was skeptical. "From what I've read, he's not exactly the charitable type." "He's changing," Kalia said, unsure why she felt compelled to defend Damon, or trying to. David sat across from her, his expression concerned. "Look, I know it's none of my business, but you seemed upset after meeting him at the cafe the other day, and now he's showing up at your work." "It's complicated," she admitted. "These things usually are." He reached across the desk to take her hand. "Just be careful, okay? I don't want to see you get hurt again." His concern was genuine, his touch warm and reassuring. David had been nothing but kind and supportive since they'd met 6 months ago at a community health fair. He was everything a woman could want. Stable, compassionate, drama-free. So why did her heart race when Damon walked into the room? Why did his offer of help they desperately needed, make her both hopeful and wary? "I'll be careful," she promised, squeezing David's hand. But as they ate lunch and discussed more pleasant topics, her mind kept returning to Damon, to the determination in his eyes and the sincerity in his voice when he said, "Because it's the right thing to do." The next day, Damon sat in the Pierce Development's boardroom, facing the hostile stares of his board members. Richard Townsend sat at the far end of the table, a satisfied smirk on his face. "The numbers speak for themselves," Townsend was saying, gesturing to the charts projected on the screen. "Pierce Developments has lost 30% of its value since Mr. Pierce's unfortunate personal decisions. Those personal decisions have nothing to do with the company's long-term viability," Damon countered. "The fundamentals remain strong." "Do they?" Townsend raised an eyebrow. "You've alienated the Hollingsworth family, restructured our most profitable development to include unprofitable affordable units, and generally behaved like a man having a midlife crisis." At 30, several board members chuckled, emboldening Townsend. "The simple fact is, Damon, you're no longer fit to lead this company. Your judgment is compromised." "By what?" "Compassion? A desire to build responsibly?" Damon looked around the table. "Is that really so threatening to all of you? What's threatening is watching our investments tank because you suddenly found a conscience," snapped Harold Jenkins, one of the oldest board members. "We're not a charity, Pierce. We're a business." "We can be both," Damon insisted. "Build quality housing that serves the community and still turn a profit. It doesn't have to be either or." "Naive idealism," Townsend scoffed. "I expected better from you, Damon. I taught you better." "You taught me to see people as numbers on a spreadsheet," Damon replied evenly. "I'm unlearning that lesson." Townsend's face hardened. "Then perhaps it's time we voted on new leadership." "You don't have the authority to call that vote," Marcus interjected from his position beside Damon. "My brother still holds controlling interest." "For now," Townsend smiled coldly. "But not for long. if my sources are correct. You've been liquidating assets, haven't you, Damon? Preparing for something big. Damon kept his expression neutral, but inwardly he cursed. Townsend had spies everywhere. My personal finances are not board business, he said firmly. Now, unless there's actual company business to discuss, this meeting is adjourned. As the board members filed out, Townsend lingered. By the way, how's your little girlfriend's community center? I hear they're looking for a new location. Sad, really. Stay away from her, Richard, Damon warned, his voice low. Or what? Townsend's smile was predatory. You're not in a position to make threats anymore, Damon. You chose the wrong side. Now you'll pay the price. After Townsend left, Marcus turned to his brother. He knows about your plan to buy the community center building. Of course he does. Damon loosened his tie in frustration. He's probably already made a higher offer. Can you match it? Not without selling my shares in Pierce Developments. Damon's expression was grim, which is exactly what he wants. He's forcing me to choose, the company or Kalia. And? Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. It's not even a choice. Damon picked up his phone. Call Harris at the bank. Tell him I'm ready to move forward with the sale. That evening, Kalia sat in her apartment with Maria and several other community center staff, trying to formulate a plan to save their building. The mood was somber. We've talked to every foundation and non-profit in the city, Maria said, rubbing her tired eyes. No one has the funds to help us purchase the building, especially not with Townsend driving up the price. What about that developer, your ex? Asked James, their youth program director. He seemed serious about helping. Damon has his own problems right now, Kalia said, remembering the headlines about Pierce Development's financial troubles. Besides, I don't want to be obligated to him. The doorbell rang, interrupting their discussion. Kalia opened it to find Jordan standing there, looking uncharacteristically serious. We need to talk, he said, stepping inside. Alone, if possible. After excusing herself from the group, Kalia led Jordan to her small kitchen. What's going on? It's about Damon. Jordan leaned against the counter. He's selling his shares in Pierce Developments. What? Why? To buy your community center building. Jordan watched her face closely. He's giving up his company for you, Kalia. She shook her head in disbelief. That's crazy. We barely know each other anymore. Why would he do something so extreme? You know why. Jordan's voice was gentle. He's trying to make amends the only way he knows how, by sacrificing something that matters to him for something that matters to you. I never asked him to do that. He knows. That's not why he's doing it. Jordan hesitated. There's more. Townsend isn't just going after the building to get back at Damon. He's been asking questions about you, digging into your past. Kalia felt a chill. Why would he care about me? Because you're Damon's weakness, and Townsend exploits weaknesses. Jordan's expression grew concerned. Be careful, Kalia. This isn't just business for Townsend anymore, it's personal. After Jordan left, Kalia rejoined her colleagues, but her mind was elsewhere. The thought of Damon giving up his company, the empire he had built from nothing, was incomprehensible. And for what? A community center building for her. As the meeting wrapped up and her colleagues left, promising to reconvene tomorrow, Kalia found herself alone with her thoughts. She picked up her phone and stared at Damon's number, her finger hovering over the call button. Before she could decide, there was another knock at her door. Assuming one of her colleagues had forgotten something, she opened it without checking the peephole. Richard Townsend stood in her hallway, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, a cold smile on his face. Ms. Brooks, he said smoothly, I believe it's time you and I had a conversation about Damon Pierce and about your future. Damon sat in his lawyer's office, signing the papers that would end his control of Pierce Developments. Each signature felt like cutting away a piece of himself, yet strangely liberating at the same time. Are you absolutely certain about this? His lawyer asked for the third time. Once these transfers are complete, you'll no longer have voting control of the company you built. I'm sure, Damon said, signing the final document. How soon can we move on the community center property? I've already prepared the offer as instructed. It's substantially above Townsend's bid. The lawyer hesitated. But Damon, there's something else you should know. My contact at the real estate office says another offer came in this afternoon from David Chen, the doctor. Damon looked up in surprise. How could he possibly match these numbers? His family, apparently. The Chens are major players in West Coast real estate. He's leveraging his trust fund to buy the building for the community center. Damon sat back, processing this information. David Chen wasn't just a handsome doctor. He was rich, from a good family, and now he was swooping in to be Kalia's hero. Perfect. His phone rang. Marcus. "What's up?" Damon answered. "You need to get to Kalia's place right now," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "Townsend is there." "What?" Damon stood abruptly. "So how do you know?" "I've been having him followed since the board meeting. He went straight from his office to her apartment building about 20 minutes ago." Damon was already moving toward the door. "Call Jordan. Tell him to get there too. And Marcus, thank you." He broke every speed limit getting to Brooklyn, his mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. Townsend was vindictive and calculating. If he thought he could hurt Damon by threatening Kalia. When he reached her building, he took the stairs two at a time, not waiting for the elevator. At her door, he hesitated only briefly before knocking forcefully. The door opened to reveal Kalia, pale but composed. Behind her, Townsend sat calmly at her kitchen table, a cup of tea in front of him. "Damon," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "you should join us. Mr. Townsend was just explaining some things about your past." Townsend smiled, the picture of relaxed confidence. "Damon, perfect timing. I was just telling Ms. Brooks about our original agreement regarding that troublesome neighborhood 5 years ago, the one she was so passionate about saving." Damon felt his blood run cold. "Kalia, whatever he's told you, is it true?" she interrupted, her eyes searching his. "Did you and Townsend deliberately target that neighborhood because the residents were vulnerable? Because you knew they couldn't fight back?" "It's more complicated than that," Damon began. "It's a simple question, Damon," she pressed. "Yes or no?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. "Yes," he finally admitted. "But I didn't understand then what I was really doing, who I was hurting." "You understood perfectly," Townsend corrected smoothly. "That was why I recruited you, Damon. Your ruthlessness, your ambition. You were willing to do whatever it took to succeed, including leaving behind anyone who might slow you down." He smiled at Kalia. "Including Ms. Brooks here." "That's enough, Richard," Damon warned. "Oh, I don't think it is." Townsend took a sip of his tea. "Ms. Brooks deserves to know exactly who you were, who you still are, beneath this newfound conscience of yours." "Why are you doing this?" Kalia asked Townsend directly. "Let's call it a public service." He set down his cup. "Damon Pierce is playing you, my dear. This whole redemption act, it's a calculated move to win back your affection. Once he has you, he'll revert to type. He always does." "That's not true," Damon said, moving closer to Kalia. "I've changed." "Have you?" Townsend's voice was silky. "Then why haven't you told Ms. Brooks about our little conversation 5 years ago, the one where you agreed that she was becoming a liability to your career?" Kalia's sharp intake of breath told Damon all he needed to know. The hurt in her eyes cut deeper than any knife. "Kalia, please," he began, reaching for her. She stepped away from his touch. "Was that why you left, because I was a liability?" "It wasn't like that." Damon ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Townsend got in my head, made me believe I had to choose between success and love." "And you chose success," she said flatly. "I was wrong." His voice cracked with emotion. "So wrong, and I've regretted it every day since." Townsend stood, straightening his suit. "Well, this has been enlightening, but I should be going. Ms. Brooks, consider my offer for the community center building. Unlike some people's promises, mine come without emotional strings attached." After Townsend left, the silence in the apartment was deafening. Kalia moved to the window, wrapping her arms around herself as if for protection. "Why is he really doing this?" she asked quietly. "It can't just be about business. It's about control," Damon answered, keeping his distance. "Townsend hates losing, and he thinks he's losing me." "Were you going to tell me about what you did 5 years ago?" "Yes, eventually." He took a step toward her. "But I wanted to show you I'd changed first, that I wasn't that man anymore." She turned to face him, her expression a mixture of anger and hurt. "By buying my building? By throwing money at the problem? That's still the old Damon, thinking you can purchase forgiveness." "That's not what I was doing," he protested. "I was trying to protect what matters to you, by sacrificing your company, the thing you left me for in the first place." She shook her head. "Do you see the irony there?" Before Damon could respond, there was another knock at the door. Kalia opened it to find David standing there, a bouquet of flowers in hand and a triumphant smile on his face. "I did it," he announced, stepping inside. "I bought the building. The community center is safe." His smile faltered as he noticed Damon. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company." "David," Kalia said, clearly overwhelmed. "You bought the building? How?" My family has resources, he said simply. When you told me how much the center meant to you, I made some calls. The deed will be transferred to a community trust. No developer will ever be able to touch it again. He presented the flowers with a flourish. Consider it an early anniversary present. 6 months tomorrow, right? Kalia accepted the flowers automatically, her eyes darting between the two men. David, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. David smiled, then finally acknowledged Damon with a nod. Mr. Pierce, I understand you were also interested in the property. I hope there are no hard feelings. Damon managed a tight smile. None at all. Congratulations on your purchase. And your anniversary. The word hung in the air between them. Anniversary. 6 months. While Damon had been planning his wedding to another woman, Kalia had been building a life with David. I should go, Damon said, moving toward the door. You two have celebrating to do. Damon, wait, Kalia called after him. We need to finish our conversation. Another time. He couldn't bear to stay and watch her with David, this perfect man who had done what Damon had planned to do, save her community center without expecting anything in return. Outside her building, Damon leaned against his car trying to collect himself. He had lost his company and failed to help Kalia, and now he knew she had been with David for 6 months, since before he'd even sent that wedding invitation. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Board meeting tomorrow at 9, Townsend moving to take control. You coming? Damon stared at the message, then at Kalia's apartment window. The light was on, silhouettes moving inside. Kalia and David celebrating their victory, their relationship. He typed back a simple response. No, it's time to let go. As he drove away, he didn't see Kalia watching from her window, her expression troubled, the flowers from David forgotten on the kitchen counter. The next morning, Kalia sat in her office at the community center, surrounded by jubilant staff members. The news of David's purchase had spread quickly, bringing relief and celebration. We need to plan a proper thank you for Dr. Chen, Maria was saying. Maybe a community dinner or naming the new youth wing after him. That's a bit much, Kalia said, uncomfortable with the idea. David doesn't want recognition. He did this anonymously. Still, it's incredible, James chimed in. A real knight in shining armor moment. Kalia nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. After Damon had left last night, she and David had talked for hours. He had been so proud of himself, so certain he had done the right thing, and he had objectively. The community center was safe, so why did she feel so conflicted? Kalia, Maria's voice broke into her thoughts. Are you okay? You seem distracted. Just tired, she said, forcing a smile. It's been an emotional few days. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Have you seen the news? Damon resigned from Pierce Developments this morning, Townsend taking over as CEO. Attached was a link to a business news article. The headline read, Damon Pierce steps down. Controversial developer cites personal reasons for departure from company he founded. Kalia excused herself and went to the privacy of the bathroom to read the full article. According to the press release, Damon had sold his remaining shares and resigned his position, effective immediately. There was a quote from him. It's time for Pierce Developments to move in a new direction. I wish the company continued success. No mention of his plans, no explanation beyond personal reasons. It was as if he had simply disappeared. Again, she dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. Next, she tried Marcus. He's gone, Kalia, Marcus said when he answered. Cleaned out his office last night and told me he needed some time away. Away where? She demanded. He didn't say. And honestly, I'm not sure I'd tell you if I knew. Marcus's voice had an edge. He gave up everything for you. Again. And somehow he still ends up alone. That's not fair, she protested. I never asked him to give up his company. You didn't have to. He's been trying to be worthy of you since the moment he saw you at that wedding. A pause. Did you know he kept your picture? All these years, hidden in his desk drawer. Kalia's throat tightened. Marcus, please, if you hear from him, I'll tell him you called, he said, his voice softening slightly. But Kalia, give him some space, he's hurting right now. After hanging up, Kalia stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed like a stranger, torn between two lives, two versions of herself. With David, she had stability, kindness, a future untainted by past betrayals. With Damon, what? Passion, history, a connection that had never truly severed, despite his abandonment, and now perhaps redemption. She returned to her office to find David waiting. a gentle smile on his face. "Surprise lunch date?" he suggested, holding up a takeout bag. "I thought we could celebrate properly." "David," she began, then hesitated. How could she explain the turmoil inside her when she barely understood it herself? He set down the food, his smile fading. "Something's wrong." "Is it about Pierce? I saw the news this morning." "Yes? No?" She sighed. "It's complicated. It always is with ex-relationships." He moved closer, taking her hands. "Kalia, I care about you a lot, but ever since he showed up at that coffee shop, you've been different, distant." "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "You've been nothing but wonderful. What you did for the community center, I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me, I did it for you." His eyes searched hers. "But that's not enough, is it?" The simple question hung between them, asking so much more than the words themselves. "I don't know," she admitted finally. "I thought I had moved on. I was happy with you. I am happy with you." "But," he prompted gently, "but seeing him again, it's brought up things I thought were resolved. Questions I never got answers to." David nodded slowly, his expression sad but understanding. "You need closure, or maybe a second chance." "I don't know what I need," she said honestly, "but I do know it's not fair to you, being with me while I'm this confused." "Are you breaking up with me?" His voice was carefully neutral. "I'm asking for time," she clarified, "to sort through these feelings, to figure out what I really want." David was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. "Take the time you need. I'll be here when you figure it out." He stepped back. "Unless, of course, you choose him. Then I'll be very professionally distant at community functions." His attempt at humor made her smile despite everything. "You're a good man, David Chen." "I know," he said with a self-deprecating grin. "It's my greatest flaw." After he left, Kalia sat at her desk, turning her phone over and over in her hands. She had asked for time, but suddenly time felt like a luxury she didn't have. Damon was gone, again, without answers, without closure. Not this time, she decided, dialing Jordan's number. "I need your help finding Damon," she said when he answered, "and I think I know where to start looking." 3 days later, Kalia stood outside a small cabin in the Catskills, her rental car parked in the gravel driveway. The wooden structure was modest but well maintained, with a porch swing and a view of the lake below. This had been a long shot, a memory from years ago when Damon had mentioned his mother's favorite retreat, a place they would rent during the few vacations they could afford. After his mother died, Damon had promised himself he would buy it someday. Apparently, he had kept that promise. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding. No answer. She was about to knock again when she spotted a figure down by the lake, sitting on the end of a small dock. Damon. She made her way down the path, fallen leaves crunching beneath her feet. He must have heard her approach, but he didn't turn around. Not until she was standing right behind him. "How did you find me?" he asked without looking up. "You told me about this place once," she said. "You said it was the only place your mother was ever truly happy." He nodded, still gazing out at the water. "She loved it here, away from bill collectors, landlords. Just peace." Kalia sat down beside him, leaving a careful distance between them. "You bought it 5 years ago," he admitted, "right after I left you. First thing I did with my new money." They sat in silence for a while, watching the afternoon sun sparkle on the lake's surface. "I heard about your resignation," she finally said, "and the sale of your shares." "It was time," he replied simply. "For what? To run away again?" Now he did look at her, his eyes shadowed with pain. "I'm not running, Kalia. I'm starting over. There's a difference." "And you couldn't tell me that yourself?" "I had to hear it from Marcus, from the news. What was I supposed to say?" A hint of bitterness crept into his voice. "Congratulations on your perfect boyfriend saving the day? On your 6-month anniversary? Don't do that," she said firmly. "Don't make this about David." "Isn't it, though? At least partly?" He turned to face her fully. "He's everything I'm not, Kalia. Stable, trustworthy, selfless. He didn't hesitate to use his family's money to help you, no strings attached. And you were what? Jealous that he beat you to it?" "No," Damon said, his voice softening. "Grateful. Grateful that you had someone like that in your life, someone who sees your worth and doesn't let you down." The simple honesty of his words caught her off guard. "Then why disappear? Why not say goodbye?" "Because saying goodbye to you once nearly destroyed me," he admitted. "I couldn't do it again." Kalia took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "What if you didn't have to?" His brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if this isn't goodbye? What if it's hello again?" Hope and wariness battled in his eyes. "Kalia, don't. Not unless you mean it. Not unless you're sure." "I'm not sure of anything," she said honestly, "except that when you disappeared again, it hurt, just like before. And I realized that despite everything, despite all the pain and anger, there's still something between us. Something I can't just walk away from." "What about David?" "I asked him for time, to figure things out." She looked down at her hands. "He understood. He's a good man. Better than me," Damon said quietly. "Different," she corrected. "Not better, just different." They sat in silence again, the weight of possibility hanging between them. "So what now?" Damon finally asked. "Now we talk," she said simply. "Really talk. About everything. No more secrets, no more running." She turned to meet his gaze. "I want to know who you are now, Damon, and I want you to know who I've become." A tentative smile tugged at his lips. "I'd like that." As the sun began to set over the lake, casting long golden reflections across the water, they talked. About the past 5 years, about mistakes and regrets, about growth and change, about who they had been and who they wanted to be. They talked until stars appeared in the darkening sky, until the night air grew chilly enough that Damon offered her his jacket. She accepted it, wrapping the warmth and his familiar scent around her shoulders. "I have one more question," she said as they finally stood to walk back to the cabin. "What will you do now, without your company?" Damon looked back at the lake, then at the small cabin he had bought in memory of his mother. "I'm not sure yet, but I've been thinking about starting something new, something smaller, more focused on community development, building homes people can actually afford in neighborhoods that need investment without displacement." "That sounds wonderful," she said, meaning it. "What about you?" he asked. "Now that the community center is safe, keep doing what I've been doing, helping families find stable housing, advocating for fair development practices." She gave him a sidelong glance. "Actually, I could use a developer who understands both sides of the equation, for consulting purposes, of course." He caught her meaning and smiled, a real smile this time, reaching his eyes. "I might know someone who fits that description." As they reached the cabin, Damon paused at the bottom of the porch steps. "Kalia, I know we have a long way to go. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I want you to know, I'm not going anywhere this time. However long it takes, whatever I need to do to prove myself to you, I'll be here." She studied him in the moonlight, this man who had broken her heart and was now offering to help heal it. The old Damon was still there, in his determination, his intensity, but there was something new too. Humility, patience, growth. "One day at a time," she said softly, reaching for his hand. Their fingers intertwined, hesitant at first, then finding their old familiar fit. Somewhere in New York City, Richard Townsend was sitting in Damon's former office, believing he had won. David Chen was perhaps wondering if Kalia would return to him, his goodness and stability offering a safe harbor after the storm. But here, under the stars by a quiet lake, Damon and Kalia were writing a new chapter, not forgetting the past, but not imprisoned by it either. "One day at a time," Damon agreed, squeezing her hand gently. It wasn't a promise of forever, it wasn't even a promise of tomorrow, but it was a beginning, again. As they stood together on the threshold of the cabin, the future stretched before them, uncertain, challenging, but filled with possibility. And for tonight, that was enough. 3 months passed like water flowing downstream, sometimes rushing quickly over rough terrain, sometimes pooling calmly in quiet eddies. Damon and Kalia's relationship began to heal, one careful step at a time. They spoke daily, met for coffee twice a week, and slowly rediscovered each other. Damon remained at the lake house working remotely on plans for his new venture, a small development firm focused on community-based housing solutions. Kalia continued her work at the community center, now securely housed in the building David had purchased. David. The name still brought a twinge of guilt whenever Kalia thought of him. He had been nothing but gracious when she explained she needed to explore her unresolved feelings for Damon. "I understand," he had said, his kind eyes sad but accepting. "Some doors need to be properly closed before others can open, or reopened in your case." They had agreed to take a step back professionally as well, with David limiting his appearances at the community center to necessary medical consultations. It was awkward, but manageable. Adult. Kalia was thinking about this as she rode the train to the Catskills on a Friday evening in early fall. The trees were beginning to turn, splashing the mountainsides with gold and crimson. Damon had invited her for the weekend, the first time they would spend more than a few hours together since their reconciliation began. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. "Good luck this weekend. And remember, he's not the same man who left you." She smiled, grateful for her friend's support. Jordan had been cautiously optimistic about her reconnection with Damon, especially after seeing the changes in him firsthand. The old Damon, calculating, status-obsessed, driven primarily by ambition, seemed to have given way to someone more grounded, more authentic, but there were still moments when Kalia wondered if she was making a mistake. Trusting Damon again wasn't easy. Even with all his efforts to prove himself, the past cast a long shadow. As the train pulled into the small station, she spotted Damon waiting on the platform, hands in the pockets of his jeans. Gone were the designer suits and carefully styled hair. This Damon wore casual clothes, had a slight scruff on his jaw, and looked more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Hey," he said simply when she stepped off the train, his eyes warming at the sight of her. "Hey yourself," she replied, adjusting her weekend bag on her shoulder. He reached for the bag. "Let me take that." Their fingers brushed during the handoff, sending a familiar spark through her. 3 months of cautious rebuilding had done nothing to diminish the physical attraction between them. "How was the trip?" he asked as they walked to his truck, an older model that had replaced his luxury sports car. "Peaceful," she said. "I got some reading done." The drive to the lake house was filled with comfortable conversation. Damon told her about his plans to renovate an abandoned building in the Bronx into affordable housing units. Kalia shared news about the community center's expanding programs. "So," he said as they turned onto the gravel driveway, "there's something I've been wanting to tell you. I was waiting until you got here." Kalia felt a flutter of apprehension. "Good news or bad news?" "Good, I think." He parked in front of the cabin and turned to face her. "I got a call from Vanessa Hollingsworth yesterday." "Your ex-fiancée?" Kalia was surprised. What did she want? To apologize, believe it or not. Damon looked bemused. Apparently, these last few months gave her some perspective. She admitted our relationship was more about social climbing than love. She's actually dating someone new, a music teacher at the private school where she volunteers. "Wow," Kalia said, genuinely shocked. "That's unexpected." "There's more," Damon continued. "She wants to invest in my new company, says she believes in what I'm trying to do now. No strings attached." "And you trust this sudden change of heart?" "Not completely," he admitted with a wry smile. "But her money is as good as anyone's, and having a Hollingsworth associated with the project gives it legitimacy that might be hard to come by otherwise, given my recent public meltdown." Kalia studied his face. "How do you feel about working with her?" "Cautious but open. People change, Kalia." His eyes met hers meaningfully. "I should know." Inside the cabin, Damon had prepared dinner, a simple but delicious pasta dish they had once loved cooking together. The table was set with candles and wildflowers, the scene both romantic and understated. "This looks wonderful," Kalia said, touched by the effort. "I remember how much you loved this meal," he replied, pulling out her chair, "though I can't promise I got it exactly right. My cooking skills are still a work in progress." Over dinner, they talked more about their lives, filling in gaps from the years they had spent apart. Damon told stories about his brother Marcus, who had recently started dating Jordan's sister. Kalia shared anecdotes about her parents, who had finally retired to Florida after years of threatening to do so. It felt normal, easy, like coming home after a long journey. After dinner, they moved to the porch swing with glasses of wine, watching as stars appeared in the darkening sky. A comfortable silence settled between them. "I've been thinking about something you said," Kalia finally spoke, her voice quiet in the night air. "The day you came to my apartment, after the wedding, you said you left because you were afraid." Damon nodded, his profile illuminated by the soft glow from the cabin windows. "I was. Terrified, actually." "Of what, really?" He took a slow sip of wine, gathering his thoughts. "Of failing you, of not being the man you thought I was." He turned to face her. "You saw something in me that I didn't believe existed. Goodness, integrity, potential for more than just success. And I was so afraid of disappointing you that I chose to leave before I could." "That makes no sense," she said gently. "Leaving was the ultimate disappointment. I know that now, but then I convinced myself it was better to make a clean break than to let you watch me become someone you couldn't love." He sighed. "Townsend played on that fear. He told me I'd never be accepted in his world with you by my side, that your activism, your principles would hold me back. And you believed him. I believed I had to choose. Success or love. I couldn't imagine having both." He reached for her hand tentatively. I chose wrong, Kalia, so wrong. She let him take her hand, feeling the warmth of his fingers intertwining with hers. I've been afraid too, she admitted. Afraid of trusting you again. Afraid this new Damon is temporary, that one day you'll wake up wanting your old life back. I won't, he said firmly. I don't miss any of it. The parties, the status, the deals, they were all just distractions, ways to fill the emptiness I felt after losing you. Kalia wanted to believe him, and more she did. But there was still something holding her back, a final piece of unfinished business. I need to talk to David, she said, in person, before we go any further. Damon nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course, he deserves that. He's a good man, Damon. He didn't do anything wrong. I know. Damon's expression was solemn. That's what makes this complicated. If he were a jerk, it would be easy. She laughed softly. Life is rarely that simple. No, he agreed, squeezing her hand. But sometimes the complicated path is the right one. The following Monday, Kalia sat in a cafe near the hospital where David worked, waiting nervously. They hadn't spoken in almost 2 weeks, the longest stretch since she had asked for time to sort out her feelings. When he walked in, still wearing his doctor's coat, her heart clenched with guilt. He spotted her and smiled, that same kind smile that had been a steady comfort for 6 months. Kalia, he said, sitting across from her, it's good to see you. You too, she replied, meaning it. Thanks for meeting me. Of course. He studied her face. You look different, happy. I am, she said softly, but also sad. He nodded, understanding immediately. You've made your decision. I have. She reached across the table, taking his hand. David, you are one of the best men I've ever known. Kind, generous, stable, everything anyone could want. But not what you want, he finished for her. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. You deserve someone who loves you completely, without reservation. And you still love him, David said simply. You always have. I tried to move on, she said, wiping away a tear. And with you I almost did. But seeing Damon again, it's like finding a missing piece of myself. For better or worse, he's part of who I am. David was quiet for a moment, processing her words. Finally, he gave her hand a gentle squeeze. I knew the risk when I started dating a woman who kept her ex-fiancé's picture in a drawer. Kalia looked up in surprise. You knew about that? I saw it once when I was looking for a pen, he admitted with a small smile. Most people don't keep photos of people they're truly over. I'm so sorry, she said again. Don't be. His voice was steady, though his eyes betrayed his sadness. Life is too short for regrets. We had a good time together, Kalia. I'll always value that. What about the community center building? She asked, suddenly concerned. You bought it for me and now... I bought it because it was the right thing to do, he corrected her. That hasn't changed. The building stays in the community trust, no matter what happens between us. Relief flooded through her. Thank you for everything. As they parted ways outside the cafe, David gave her a final hug. Be happy, Kalia, he whispered. Just make sure he deserves you this time. She watched him walk away, a complicated mixture of sadness and gratitude washing over her. David Chen had been her safe harbor after the storm of Damon's betrayal. She would always be thankful for that. But now it was time to sail back into deeper waters, where the risks were greater, but so were the rewards. 2 days later, Kalia found herself outside Richard Townsend's office building. The decision to come here hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. Before she could fully move forward with Damon, she needed to understand the man who had helped drive them apart. Townsend's secretary looked surprised when Kalia announced herself, but showed her in immediately. Apparently, Kalia's name still carried weight in these circles, if only as a curiosity. Richard Townsend sat behind an enormous desk, looking exactly as she remembered him from her apartment, impeccably dressed, coldly handsome, with eyes that calculated your worth the moment they saw you. Miss Brooks, he said, standing politely. This is unexpected. Please, sit. She remained standing. I won't take much of your time, Mr. Townsend. I just wanted to ask you something directly. His eyebrow arched with interest. By all means. Why? She asked simply. Why did you work so hard to separate Damon and me 5 years ago? And why try to hurt us again now? Townsend smiled thinly. Business, Miss Brooks, nothing personal. I don't believe that, she said firmly. This feels personal. He studied her for a moment, then gestured again to the chair across from his desk. This time she sat. You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for, he said, sitting back down. The truth? Damon reminded me of myself at his age. Raw talent, ambition, fire. But he had something I never did. What? You? Townsend's voice held a surprising note of sincerity. Someone who loved him for himself, not what he could become. Someone who believed in his better nature. So you took that away from him? Kalia's voice sharpened. Out of jealousy? Out of a desire to see how far he could go without limitations? Townsend shrugged elegantly. It was an experiment of sorts. Would he become truly great if he focused solely on ambition? Or would he remain ordinary? You treated his life, our lives, like a game, she said, disgust evident in her tone. I prefer to think of it as mentorship, he countered, albeit of a particular kind. And now, why try to hurt us again? Townsend's expression hardened slightly. He disappointed me. All that potential wasted on feelings. He practically spat the word. The moment he saw you at that wedding, I knew I'd lost him. My protégé, my creation, undone by a woman in a blue dress. Kalia stood, having heard enough. You're wrong about him, Mr. Townsend. Damon isn't great because of what he built or how much money he made. He's great because he had the courage to walk away from it all when he realized it wasn't making him happy. She moved toward the door, then paused. That's something I suspect you've never had the strength to do. Townsend's mask of confidence slipped just slightly, revealing a flicker of something that might have been regret. Perhaps, he acknowledged quietly. Perhaps not. As she left his office, Kalia felt lighter, as if understanding Townsend's twisted motivations had removed the last shadow from her past with Damon. They had been pawns in a game played by a lonely, bitter man who couldn't bear to see others find what had always eluded him: genuine connection. Outside on the busy Manhattan street, she pulled out her phone and called Damon. I just met with Townsend, she said when he answered. What? Why? His concern was evident even through the phone. Closure, she said simply. I needed to understand what happened 5 years ago from all sides. And did you get what you needed? She smiled, watching the flow of people around her, all rushing somewhere, chasing success or love or both. Yes, I'm ready to come home now. There was a moment of silence on his end. Home? To the lake house, she clarified, if the invitation still stands. Always, he said, his voice warm with emotion, for as long as you want it. 1 year later, the lake house had undergone a transformation. What had once been a simple weekend cabin was now a permanent home with an expanded kitchen, a sunroom overlooking the water, and a small office where Kalia and Damon both worked when not in the city. Pierce Community Development, Damon's new company, had completed its first project, a renovation of an abandoned school building into family apartments with a daycare center and community garden. The project had won awards for innovation and social impact, proving that profitable development could also serve community needs. Kalia continued her work at the community center, but had also joined the board of Damon's company, providing guidance on community engagement and affordable housing initiatives. They made a powerful team, his business acumen paired with her social conscience, creating projects that truly made a difference. On a warm Saturday in September, they hosted a gathering at the lake house. Marcus and Jordan's sister Claire were there, their relationship having blossomed into something serious. Jordan came with his new girlfriend, a chef who kept everyone well fed throughout the day. Even Vanessa attended with her music teacher boyfriend, their initial awkwardness giving way to genuine camaraderie as the day progressed. As evening approached, Damon found Kalia sitting on the dock, her feet dangling in the water. He sat beside her, handing her a glass of wine. Happy? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Very, she confirmed, leaning against his shoulder. It's been a good year. He nodded, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I got a call from David Chen yesterday. Kalia looked up in surprise. Really? What did he want? To partner on a project. He's starting a non-profit medical clinic in the Bronx and needs a developer to renovate the space. Damon's expression was thoughtful. He specifically asked for me. That's unexpected, she said, echoing her words from a year earlier. That's what I said. Damon chuckled. But he told me something interesting. Said he believes people should be judged by who they are now, not who they were before. Sounds like David, Kalia said softly. Always seeing the best in people. I told him I'd be honored to work with him. Damon put his arm around her shoulders. Life is funny, isn't it? The people you think are your enemies sometimes become allies, and sometimes the person you push away turns out to be your salvation. Kalia smiled, turning to face him fully. Is that what I am? Your salvation? You're so much more than that, he said, his eyes serious. You're my conscience, my partner, my home. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "And if you'll have me my wife." Kalia's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a ring, not large or flashy, but beautifully crafted with a design that incorporated wave patterns like the lake before them. "I'm not the man I was 5 years ago," Damon said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm not asking you to forget what happened between us, but I am asking you to believe in our future, the way you once believed in me when no one else did." Tears filled Kalia's eyes as she looked from the ring to his face. "Are you sure? No doubts this time?" "Not a single one," he said firmly. "I've had everything money can buy, Kalia. None of it meant anything without you. I'm not making that mistake again." She took his face in her hands, looking deep into his eyes that had once been cold with ambition, but now shone with love and certainty. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, cheers erupted from the direction of the house. They looked up to see their friends and family watching from the porch, glasses raised in celebration. "How long have they been standing there?" Kalia laughed through her tears. "Long enough," Marcus called out. "We were taking bets on whether you'd say yes." "And who bet against me?" Damon demanded, helping Kalia to her feet. "No one," Jordan admitted with a grin. "Some things are just inevitable." As they walked back toward the house, toward the people who had supported them through their journey back to each other, Damon paused for a moment. "Thank you," he said quietly to Kalia. "For what?" "For coming to my wedding," he said with a smile. "The wrong one, as it turns out." "Well," she replied, her eyes twinkling, "I expect you to show up to the right one this time." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he promised, sealing the vow with a kiss. Above them, the first stars appeared in the twilight sky. Behind them, the lake reflected the last golden rays of sunset, and ahead, the warm lights of home beckoned, filled with the people they loved. It had been a long and winding road, with wrong turns and painful detours, but finally Damon and Kalia had found their way back to each other, stronger for the journey, wiser for the pain, and certain that this time their love would last. In Manhattan, Richard Townsend sat alone in his penthouse office, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand. On his desk lay an invitation, elegant cream cardstock announcing the upcoming wedding of Damon Pierce and Kalia Brooks. He had been surprised to receive it. After their last encounter, he had assumed he would never hear from either of them again. Yet here was this invitation, with a handwritten note from Damon. "You helped shape who I was, but she helped me become who I was meant to be. We both wanted you to witness the result." Townsend smiled faintly, raising his glass in a silent toast to the empty room. "Well played, Damon," he murmured. "Well played indeed." He would not attend, of course. That wasn't his world, one of genuine emotion and connection. But he would send a gift, something appropriate for the man who had walked away from an empire to find something far more valuable. In the end, perhaps Damon Pierce had taught Richard Townsend more than the other way around. On a crisp autumn day with leaves falling like confetti around them, Damon and Kalia exchanged vows on the dock by the lake. No elaborate decorations, no society photographers, no carefully curated guest list, just the people who truly mattered to them, witnessing their promise to face whatever came next together. As Marcus, serving as best man, handed over the rings, he whispered to his brother, "No cold feet this time." Damon's eyes never left Kalia's face as he answered, "Not even close." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in cheers and applause. David Chen, who had come alone but seemed genuinely happy for them, was among the loudest. At the reception, held in a tent beside the lake house, Jordan raised his glass for a toast. "To second chances," he said, looking fondly at the newlyweds, "and to finding your way home, no matter how long it takes." Later, as they danced under twinkling lights strung above the makeshift dance floor, Damon held Kalia close. "No regrets?" he asked softly. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting all the love and hope and healing of their journey. "Not a single one. Every step, even the painful ones, led us here." As the night deepened and stars multiplied overhead, they slipped away from the celebration, walking hand in hand to the end of the dock. The lake stretched before them, calm and dark, reflecting the countless stars above. "What do you think happens now?" Kalia asked, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Now," Damon smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "Now we build something that lasts, together." And in that moment, standing between sky and water, past and future, they both knew they had finally found what they had been searching for all along, not success or status or safety, but home. In each other's arms, in each other's hearts, they were finally truly home. The end.